On the 1st of May 2018, I left the Deben, having launched at Woodbridge. That always entails crossing the bar almost exactly 2 hours after local high water. I calculated that I would have 3.1 metres of water on the bar, which gave a safety margin of over a metre for my 1.95 metre draft. In practice, the depth I recorded actually went right down to 2.4 metres. I found that a bit close for comfort, and this video is a follow-up to our original video of the passage to try and show why I think I got it wrong. The previous year, for the first time in over 20 years, I didn't risk leaving the river on the same tide that I launched because of stories of how shallow the bar had become. This year I decided to risk it based on two statements from John White, the Deben estuary pilot. Firstly, on the 4th of March, he tweeted that he'd recorded 1 metre on the bar when the Harwich gauge showed 0.5 metres, implying a depth of chart datum of 0.5 metres on the bar. Secondly, alongside the Trinity House chartlet published on the East Coast Pilot, he went on record as saying that the bar was safe for a boat drawing 1.9 metres to cross between 3 hours before high water and 2 hours after. I based my decision to leave calculated on a height of tide of 2.6 metres, 2 hours after high water, plus 0.5 metres of water below chart datum to give a depth of water of 3.1 metres at my expected crossing time. On the day, despite being 10 minutes before my predicted time, you can see on this clip that close to Knoll Spit, the echo sounder showed depths of 2.5 metres, with occasional dips to 2.4. When I got in, I carefully checked the calibration of the echo sounder, and I'm absolutely convinced it's accurate to the nearest 0.1 of a metre. I rechecked my calculations and found that they could be refined. I was 10 minutes early, which would have added 0.1 of a metre to the height of tide. However, I had been using the orange curve, which is for mean spring tides. The actual tide at Walton was 4.2 metres, appreciably bigger. In the same way that extrapolation can be used between springs and neaps, you can extrapolate for bigger tides, and the end result cancelled out my arriving 10 minutes early, so I was still satisfied with 2.6 as the calculated height of tide, within the limits of the process. The first clue as to what had gone wrong came a week later when John White published his chartlet for 2018. I disregarded the 2017 chartlet as being out of date, but the 2018 one showed exactly the same depths, in this case taken at low water on the 18th of April. The only changes were to the extent of East Knoll. There was no longer any mention of the 0.5 metres at chart datum on the bar. The chartlet does not indicate whether the depths were corrected to chart datum, and some have suggested that they were just soundings. However, John does appear to have corrected them, but using a height of tide at low water of 0.2 metres above chart datum, which is the figure given by the Harwich Haven Authority for Harwich at that time and date. However, the online site, Tide Times, gives data specific to Woodbridge Haven, and they indicate that on the 18th of April, low water was 0.4 metres above chart datum. If you use that figure to correct John's data, you end up with an area in a channel awash at chart datum, which fits very closely with what I found on the 1st of May. I decided to revisit the bar at high water, when I could more or less eliminate calculation errors, and it would be safe to explore the limits of the channel. So on the 15th of June I headed back, with the intention of recording depths on the way in close to the eastern knoll, and on the way out close to the transits between the buoys. The camera was in a slight telephoto setting, so I appeared to be closer to West Knoll than I actually was. I estimate I was about 4 boat lengths away on the inbound run. Depth stayed much deeper than I expected. The tidal height using Reed's Walton data and second report corrections of 3.9 metres, plus a 0.2 metre surge, giving 4.1 metres at high water. I was 30 minutes before high water, so there was still some flood running, and I calculate the tidal height at about 4 metres, which is what you need to take off the echo sounder readings to get chart datum. Depth remained over 6 metres until just before Knoll Spit, which I left about 3 boat lengths to port. The minimum depth I saw was 4.4 metres, that is 0.4 metres at chart datum, just before Knoll Spit. By the time I was abeam Knoll Spit, the depth was up to 4.7 metres. At first, the return run gave very similar results to the inward run, but approaching Knoll Spit, it got shallower much earlier. It went down to 4.1 metres, that is 0.1 at chart datum, and stayed not much more most of the way to West Knoll, even falling to 4.2 not far from West Knoll. After passing Knoll Spit, this route had 2 metres less water than on the inward bound run. On this visit, I was probably half a boat length further off Knoll Spit than I had been when I launched. This may explain why, when adjusted for tidal height, I had found even less water in May than I did today. It was alarming to see the sounder drop to 4.2, i.e. only 0.2 metres of water below chart datum, this far out and this close to the transit between West Knoll and Knoll Spit. It was okay at this state of tide, but if you were coming in or out on the flood and were close to your safety limits, you really wouldn't want to be here. I would suggest both buoys should be moved out a bit. It would make the channel narrower, but it might reduce the number of people grounding on West Knoll. As with all such reports, this is all historical data. On the 15th of June, the safest route was probably about halfway between those I took, but who knows what it is now. On that day, there was plenty of water to take your 1.9 metre boat over the bar 2 hours before to 1 hour after high water, whatever route you took. Outside those times, I would check the state of play with John White, and whether you attempt it or not rather depends on what safety margins you can live with in the prevailing conditions.